So we just started bringing the drill down. We are currently expanding the hole a little bit. You can see about maybe a quarter of the way down it comes in, because what happened is I added a drill here to hopefully allow the bars there on the side of the clamps to help keep the clamps aligned a little bit better with the scaffold, at least not go so far off kilter that they fall off of the scaffold, because that has been a recurring problem. I tried a couple of different things to make that work. Wheels didn't go very well. Putting more landing clamps on there, they're just too big. I suppose I could always make the drill even bigger, but we are getting to the limits of how far out I've designed this thing to go. So I'm trying not to do that, but it may happen. Anyway, we're gonna watch it go for now, and hopefully it will go smoothly. And yeah, here we go. Because the drills are in quote-unquote expand mode, we have a lower threshold for triggering mining mode, which slows down the clamps. Instead of going at 0.5 meters per second, they go at 0.05 meters per second. Reason for that is we're purposely expanding the hole rather than just digging down deeper in the hole. Since we're expanding, we've got one drill that is, or one drill on the end of each arm at least, that is going to be fairly consistently engaged with the side of the hole. And once the main cargo container fills up, that will then start filling up that drill in particular and not all the other ones. And that will also dramatically reduce the amount of ore we are able to recover each tick. So we need a lower threshold to trigger that, otherwise we will jam up the drills on the side of the hole there, which happened a couple times before I figured that out. So when I tried to record this earlier, the clamps ended up coming clean off of the scaffold in an unrecoverable way, such that I just had to reload the game from a backup at that. Hence these redesigns. So I'm trying again now, but when I was trying earlier, I ended up making an hour-long video of 2 reloads and me walking around trying to explain how everything works here. So I'm going to try to do this in multiple videos instead, so they're a little bit shorter. This one's just going to be a demonstration of it walking down and walking back up, and probably only doing so expanding the hole rather than going all the way down to the bottom of it, because that's a long way down and I don't think we're going to get there in one trip. This is the 3rd or 4th trip I've taken so far already, just expanding. You can see we still have quite a ways to go. Anyway, I will briefly explain how some of this stuff is set up just while we're going down here. You can see we've got our main information panel. I rearranged the information on here a little bit from some of the screenshots I took earlier and from the video I did earlier, so that the more detailed status information is up at the top. Reason for that being, when you come out of a camera from the flight seat, you're facing straight forward, and it's nice to be able to see the cargo, which is already there on the bottom. I guess that's kind of unnecessary now since I moved the cargo readout to the bottom too. But we've also got the status readout there on the bottom, because the status readout with the mining indicator there now and the cargo capacity is really the most useful information. That can kind of give you an indication of what the rest of this stuff says, but that's, you know, decent detailed information for debugging stuff that so far inevitably goes wrong. Looks like we're staying lined up pretty well so far. That's good. One of the other things I've done since I tried to record the last time was I very much heavily reduced the torque on the rotor here. Not this one. This one, the rotor that's driving the drills. With that torque turned up to the default setting, I think that was part of the reason why every time we got hung up, it would twist the drill off of the scaffold. So now that rotor is set to a quarter? No, that's an eighth of the default torque. Braking torque still at the normal default. And that speed, I'm not sure if that's the best speed, but it seems to work fairly well with the speed the pistons are going when they're mining. Go too slow and you have to go even slower with the pistons. Go too fast and you're going faster than the drills can chew out whatever's in front of them. I guess, laterally as they're spinning rather than in front of them as they're going down. But anyway, these settings seem to be relatively okay. Rotor displacement's as high as it can be just to push everything as far down out of the way of the rest of the drill head as possible. Anyway, so that's the rotor settings. And since we're in expand mode, quote unquote, and most of the drills are not actually doing any good, they're not going to fill up. So that 1 million liter cargo capacity there, really only about, 423,000 of it, I guess, whatever the capacity of the large cargo container, is really particularly useful. There's another 100,000 there for the 4 drills on the tips, give or take a little bit. So the threshold for when we say, okay, we're full and go back up to unload is also significantly lower when you're in expand mode. I don't know how generally useful expand mode is going to be. I mean, the reason why I expanded the drill in the first place is because I'm trying to find ways of keeping the clamps on the scaffold. Once I get that to work, I don't know that expand mode will necessarily be useful, but it's useful for now, so I don't have to sit here and abort at the last minute when I'm starting to get full. Speaking of abort, since this is a redo of the video and I haven't explained it in this one, the programming block is set up with 4 commands. The one that you can see here on every one of my toolbars is the abort command, which will immediately set the pistons to go up and also implement the hold condition, which says that once it does get up there and does have an empty cargo hold, it will still not release and come back down. That can also be done by itself by just turning on hold. It will not immediately go up, but it will still stay put when it gets up to the top. You can see there next to the connector status right around the middle, the hold indicator is there versus now it's not. I need to fix that text there. I'm missing a space. But yeah, so that's the hold mode. Then command 3 there is reverse. That will reverse the direction no matter which direction you're currently going. So if you abort by mistake and you want to go back down, you can hit reverse and it'll go back down. Or you can go back up if you're going down, and it won't actually lock you into hold mode like abort will. And then command 4 there is just to toggle the expand mode. So if I hit that now, we would have a higher threshold for ore per tick to slow down the drill, and a higher threshold for saying we're full. The presumption there being that if you're not in expand mode, you are actually going to be filling all of the drills, which there's now 25 drills altogether. There's 6 on each arm and then 1 in the middle, and there's 4 arms. So that's the commands. Then there's the cameras. We've got the abort command there on item 1, and this is the drill cam showing straight down so you can watch the drills turn. This is a moving camera that is currently not moving. That's controlled by the commands on toolbar number 3. We can unlock the rotor, we can reverse the rotor, we can increase the speed and decrease the speed. Now, since this is a rotor and velocity is positive or negative, increase is to make it positive, and that will, in this instance, reverse the rotor unless we're already, going this direction. But it's offset just enough that when it's at 0, it is still actually moving, but it's moving slowly enough that the rotor lock can stop it. So that is camera 3, which is, kind of camera 2 since 1 is abort. But anyway, 4 is one of the clamps. 5 is the other clamp, so we can, watch them move and see how far off the scaffold they've wandered. So far, we're right on the scaffold still, which is a good thing. I'm hoping that has something to do with my change to the drill rotor's torque settings, and that will stay there. Um, Camera on 6 is the grinder there on one side. It also gives you a good view of how aligned you are, and you can see at the bottom there the projection of the rail that's being excuse me, projected by the scaffold. There's 2 projectors up at the top of the scaffold. This is the other side. And since those are about even, you can tell that we're fairly close to on point here as far as alignment's concerned. Usually, even if the clamps look okay, if you come down here, you'll sometimes see it's a little bit more off than it is up at the top, which is definitely a bad sign. But we look like we're doing all right for now. And then 8 and 9 are at the top. They're either side of the connector, which is why it's basically the same view. It's just flipped around. So those are the cameras. And then on toolbar number 4, these are some realignment controls. One there just turns off the programming block entirely so that the script stops running. Useful so that when you're messing with stuff, the script doesn't try to change it. Item 2 there is to reverse the clamps. There's a number of instances where the drill will get stuck, and just reversing the clamps helps. Also, when it gets up to the top and is locked in place, it locks both clamps at the same time. So when you do that, it unlocks both clamps at the same time. And then there's the connector, and that missing one there is on the scaffold grid. It's actually the pistons attached to the merge blocks. And if you unlock the clamps, unlock the connector, and then reverse the pistons a couple times, you'll kind of get the drill head to be a little bit more correctly lined up with the grid for the scaffold. So if you're completely off, that helps you get kind of back on track. It's good for fairly minor corrections. If you are way off, then you will actually need to get out and mess with the pistons a little bit and make sure that they extend out far enough to actually catch the drill head. And the one that comes in on the side, you may have to retract it and wait until you get it lined up with the other piston to get that one snapped in. Anyway, that's the toolbar. Let's go back to the drill camera, see how we're doing. Drill hasn't locked up, that's a good sign. And we are at 27% cargo capacity, assuming that the expand mode is working correctly. That should start going back up at around 416,000, a little bit short of the cargo capacity of the large cargo container sitting in front of us there. Because as I said, there's only one drill on each arm that's actually doing any good, so we don't want to overload it and get to the point where our increase in cargo per tick is fooling the whole thing into thinking it's not, actually mining and start moving too quickly, and then locking the drills up by doing that in the rock because it's descending faster than the drills can clear the rock out of the way. Anyway, things seem to be going fairly smoothly so far, and most encouraging thing is that the clamps have not wandered off the scaffold, because that is the most severe problem that I've been having in developing this thing. And like I said, I'm hoping that that's because the advanced rotor's torque was set too high, and every time it got even a little bit jammed up, it would just torque the whole thing off of the scaffold. So now that it's lower, it'll be more likely that the drill will just get stuck for a little bit. Maybe even stuck, but at least it won't jack the thing off of the scaffold. And then we'll just have to check and make sure that we catch the drill being stuck and abort before things get too messed up. So far things are going well though. We'll see if we actually do start ascending like we're supposed to here in just a second. Yep, that condition looks like it is not working. Super. Alright, well that'll take some debugging. I'm going to give it a little bit just because I know there's a bit of a cushion there with the 4 drills that do have cargo capacity that are actually doing some work, and then I'll go ahead and abort it. And we'll climb back out. Abort. So now if we look at what's going on here at the grinders, we are actually grinding up our rails rather than welding new ones. The projected blueprint is following us up now instead of following us down. That's a pretty simple script that's being run on the scaffold rather than on the drill, because obviously the projector has to be attached to the grid that it's, building stuff onto, just the way projectors work. Made that mistake in the beginning too, but of course the grid was not attached. It was out of bounds, so I couldn't weld anything. But we are climbing up. Drills are not stuck. Still getting a little bit of ore. Pulling out, a liter or two on the way up, just kind of scraping the sides. But we are definitely scraping the sides now rather than actually fully engaging the drills at the end of the arms. It says mining there, but it doesn't actually care if it's mining or not. It'll still go the same speed when it's going up. When it's going down, it cares whether it's mining or not, and it slows down. If it's going up, it's just going to go up, because there's no way we're going to bind the drills up going up. At least not, based on going too quickly. Certainly will if we're, crooked, which happened in the previous recording, and knocked the whole thing off the scaffold and into the hole. You can see it coming out there. See our big pile of rubble. Since, this is creative and I don't really have a use for any of it other than to just get it out of the cargo container so we can go again. And you can see the locking clamps there, the merge blocks on the pistons, and a little catwalk to climb up to the top. I still need to rearrange some things on the top. I mean, I wouldn't call that, done. That's not very pretty, but it's functional. It does what it needs to do. That part's pretty basic. That's all about operating the projectors. I mean, I've got a remote control and a flight seat up there just so I could control the projectors manually before I got the programming block in the script there, doing it all for me. But that script is pretty simple and has been pretty reliable. If we check our connector cams, we can see ourselves coming up online with the connector, and we are still very well lined up here on the scaffold with our walking clamps. So I'll go ahead and get out here and we can watch them engage as we get up to the top. We're going to get kicked around here a little bit because we're not quite lined up on the same grid as the scaffold. There we go. See, we got when we stopped, and then when we clamp, get kicked around again. But yeah, we're stopped now, and you can see the cargo is unloading. So yeah, this was a much more successful test than the first one, even though we didn't go all the way to the bottom. Limited objectives at this point. And as I said, we are expanding the hole, around, and that tends to fill up our cargo a little bit faster, especially since we're not actually using most of the cargo capacity, which is, rather than being in the large cargo container, is really in the 25 drills that are here, which each have about 23,000, 24,000 liters of volume capacity apiece, which is, altogether about 600,000, give or take. Whereas the large cargo container is 423. But you can see we've got some status panels around here that show the current cargo usage and capacity, and the current action status. We are unloading, and it looks like we're counting connectors in our, we're counting the connector up here on the scaffold in our cargo capacity. That's why that went up. And you can also see that the connector's not quite aligned right, and that is what those commands on toolbar number 4 and the flight seat were for, and that is also what these buttons on the button panel will do. So we will turn off the scripting block. That is off. We will switch the clamps off, and off. We will disconnect the connector. That's going to jerk us around a little bit because now we're just being held by the merge block. Merge blocks. There's another one over here. Now, if the scripting block was on, it would, be trying to connect us up because we're up here at the top. But since we're not, we can reverse the pistons on the merge blocks. And you see we're jerking around here a little bit, but not too much. But, just kind of do that a couple times. And then if we come up here again, we can see that we're much better lined up with the connector, which is a solid indicator that the walking clamps are very well aligned also. So now that that is done, we will reconnect the connector, re-engage the clamps, and turn the scripting block back on. You can see our status is still unloading. That obviously took a pause since the connector was disengaged. And we are on hold. Since we're on hold, I will go ahead and fix that little text glitch, and we'll take a look and see if we can figure out why the signal's not coming through when it is full. Just need a space there. Go ahead and save that so it doesn't get messed up. Yeah, and it reset, so got flung around a little bit. So that is managed here, check full. And what we're supposed to be doing is if we're in expansion mode. Oh, that's why, because I have it backwards. Good reason. So if we're in expansion mode, it's multiplying this by 1 instead of multiplying it by 20. We need to multiply it by 20 if we're in expansion mode, and multiply it by 1 if we're not. So this is basically the inventory stats. 0 is the current usage, 1 is the total capacity, and then we're taking the total capacity, and this is in kiloliters, oddly enough. So take away 30 is 30,000 liters. Multiplied by 20 is 600,000 liters, which is about the capacity of the drills. I mean, this is a rough estimate; it doesn't have to be perfect. The main idea is that we're, not pulling in so little, or that the drill thinks it's idling and needs to speed up to get down to some ore, when it's really just because it's full and not taking in enough ore to do that, and it's going to lock the drills up. So that should fix that. I'm going to get jerked again here, probably. No, we're pretty well lined up, so it doesn't care. It's fine. Anyway, we're still unloading. We've got these the status panels on all 4 sides of the cargo container. Well, the 3 sides, the main info panels on this other side, and that's far more useful, obviously. But we are still in hold mode. When we reset the scripting block, it comes up in ascending hold mode. Now it went back to descending because one of the first things it does in each tick is it tries to reset the alignment if we're docked. And one of the ways it signals its process through the alignment, and something that has to happen anyway, is it switches it back into descending mode. So if it's ascending and it's connected to the connector up there, it will disconnect, set it to descending mode, release the clamps, and the merge blocks will put us back on grid. And then it'll come through and say, okay, I'm not connected, and I'm, in descending mode, but I'm still on the same grid as the scaffold, so I must need to reconnect. Yeah, that logic was fun to figure out. I'll show you the code in another video. But for now, cargo capacity 0. We've emptied out all the ore we got there. I'm probably going to run this a few times just to get the hole expanded so I can actually do a demo of us going through the whole thing. But yeah, this is this video for now. So thanks for watching. Hope this was interesting, and hope you are interested enough in it to watch some of the follow-up videos as far as how everything works. Thank you to Kozaki. I'm probably saying that wrong. He Kozaki did the original YouTube video that inspired me to do this. All the videos that I had seen of automatic drills were basically lots of pistons, some of which were actually constructing conveyor tubes along the way, and kind of pushing further and further out that way. lots of connectors, lots of merge blocks, lots of conveyors, um, and fairly complicated and kind of finite in how far they could actually go. But this one, based on his design, her design, I don't know. Sorry. Based on their design, um, is pretty much infinite. I mean, the limitations are steel plates, which we have two small cargo containers chock full of creative spawn steel plates. Um, we're running a little bit low because every once in a while the grinder will miss one on the way back up, and the steel plates will end up getting destroyed on the way back down. Um, so it's not completely full. But the other limitation in survival mode, anyway, would be power. Obviously this is creative, so we can run it on a completely empty small reactor, and that's fine. But if I was in survival, most of this floor would probably be batteries instead of armor blocks, and we would want to recharge those batteries every time we come up to unload cargo. Whether that means there's a huge solar farm up here, wind farm, or nuclear reactor with actual uranium in it, or maybe just some uranium that we can transfer into the small reactor here. And as far as the steel plates are concerned, one of the refinements I would like to make to this, and will make in some future version once I get this much of it working correctly, will be to put a refinery, a basic refinery, and a basic assembler on here, so that we can refine some of the stone into ingots, which will, first of all, completely increase our cargo capacity because ingots are smaller than ore. So we'll be getting rid of stone and replacing it with ingots, so we'll expand our cargo capacity that way. And also some of the iron ingots will then be able to feed into the assembler and keep the steel plates topped up. Now, some of those steel plates on the way back up will end up getting wasted because there'll be nowhere to put them, so we'll probably have to, set up some kind of ejector or something to dump those out, and they'll end up, getting lost unless somebody decides to go down and collect them. But since we'll be making more of them and we'll be staying at this basic capacity here, which I worked out, I think, to be about 500 meters deep. The hole now is about 240, 250 meters deep. So, why you would need to go that deep, I have absolutely no idea. But the point is that it's effectively limitless since it builds its own rails, and it builds it out of a very simple block that's just steel plates. And, we'll basically be able to make as many steel plates as we want or need. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of what's going on and a brief demonstration of it functioning. So I'm done now. Stay tuned, and I'll make another video about the actual programming of the scripting block, and kind of a little bit more in-depth tour of the rest of this thing. This is just like I said, I did an hour-long video that was a bunch of it falling off of the scaffold. And kind of that more detailed explanation, so I'm going to break it up. Anyway, thanks.